Alright, what do we got this time? Let's see. The Denpa Men. They came by wave. It was a charming little RPG released on the 3DS, filled with quirky characters, colorful men, and a lot of cool enemies. It was really good casual fun. So, let me just replay this game again and tell you all about it. What can possibly go wrong?
Oh god, he hits the entire team. Oh no, he hits the entire team too. Oh god, what is he doing? Oh god, please don't do it again. Oh my god, he's gonna do it again. Oh god, he's gonna do it again.
Please, no, let me go. I don't want to go. Please, I don't want to go on the adventure. I don't want to go on an adventure.
Whoa, my skin's looking a little red today.
The Denpa Men. They came by wave. It's a charming little RPG that came out on the 3DS eShop back in 2012. See, at the start, the 3DS eShop mostly had shovelware. Nothing really substantial was offered, so the Denpa Men was more than a welcome addition to the 3DSware library. For $10, you get a full adventure game made by Genius Sonority, the same team that brought us the Pokemon console games on the GameCube. And the quality was there, along with the influences from Pokemon as well. The game was really colorful and had a bunch of cool looking monsters. So when you start up a new game, you get paired with a randomly generated hero who floats about before greeting you. He gives you a quick rundown. His girlfriend was kidnapped by the evil king, so he needs your help to recruit others like him. How? By catching them against their will so they can be forced to do his bidding. I'm only half kidding. You do catch other Denpa Men by shooting a net when their back is turned, so make of that as you will. The game's catching mechanic is definitely unique too. It uses the 3DS's camera. You had to navigate around by moving with the system, sort of like the Face Raider games that came packaged in. In the game's lore, Denpa Men are generated by radio waves. But really, the explanation is that the 3DS would pick up Wi-Fi networks and generate Denpa Men based on the names of them. So you could get short ones, tall ones, ones with magical abilities, some without antenna, but do better with the physical stat department, and many more. When you obtain a new Denpa, they do have a little line of dialogue before you look at their stats and decide whether to keep them or not. For the tutorial, you can recruit up to 4 men in your team. Any more and the rest hang out in this Mii Plaza purgatory looking area, just waiting for you to drag them back and forth. You could even talk to them too. They either have advice for the game, or talk mad spit about humans. Hey yo, this one just called you silly. So, let's pick our team and start our journey. So, we head to the caves. And as you can see, the monsters are viewable in the overworld. If they see you, they'll give chase. Now, let's talk about the battle system. The top screen is where all the action is shown, and the bottom screen is your Denpa status. Pressing Y or tapping auto sets the Denpa Men to automatically use skills. Think elemental attacks or buffs. The auto system is surprisingly convenient and smart to an extent. I'll get into more depth later when the battles allow for more strategies. Pressing X or tapping no skills just have them all use basic attacks, so they mob rush the enemy. Of course, these are just shortcuts. You can manually command your Denpa too. At the end of the battle, you get EXP and gold. You also see how much accumulated EXP each Denpa received. Plus, you get to see which stats go up by how much when they level up. Oh yeah, give me my jRPG upgrades without needing to feel like a monster for grinding enemies. You can also find treasure chests in the dungeons. They usually give you consumable items, money, and equipment that can give you an edge in battle. And trust me, you're gonna need it, because the game is really hard. I had to heal multiple times between battles, so it can be really difficult to keep up with the enemy sometimes. Strength in numbers can only take you so far since each Denpa can be considerably fragile. Thankfully, your main hero always has the ability to revive someone back to max HP. As you trot along the first dungeon, you meet an NPC that gives you your first objective: kill the boss. Okay, these mole NPCs are kinda cute too. You'll see more of them along the way. But yeah, for the first dungeon, it's only 3 floors, and the third floor is just pretty much the boss fight. So for the first boss, you gotta fight up against Wolf Bear. He's blocking the way to the Tower of Evil, so you, the Denpa Men, must clear the path. You gotta really love how cocky your hero is too. There really isn't too much of the boss fight just yet, since it's really early game. But one convenient thing I like to bring up now is how effective the auto system is. Since you recruit up to 8 members, the dev team probably felt that deciding strategy might take up too much time per turn. And you'll see later on that this game is clearly meant for comfort grinding. So the auto system have the Denpa Men adapt during battle. For example, if the boss kills someone and your reviver is set on auto, then they will revive on the fly and bring them back within that same turn. Once you kill the boss, you get access to a treasure room, one chest housing the very first suit you can put on. These suits are really cute too. They're visible on your Denpa and change up how they look. And the big old chest in the center houses these raft parts. Collecting raft parts in an adventure game. Seems a little familiar for this channel, don't you think? Before you warp back, your hero asks if you're sure because the Tower of Evil is up ahead, and remember, we're after the Evil King. So, I went back to the island first to see if I can capture more men. Thanks to the expanded room, we were able to take 2 more. The shop also opens up in the island known as Digital. Wow, I just got the pun, holy. But yeah, you should definitely check out the shop after you clear out every dungeon. So I went back and, whoa, this area is level 15. Quite the jump for our level 3 guys, but I'm sure we can... Oh, they're missing a lot. I barely managed to beat this single bat, and I was trying to poke my head in further to see if I can nab an OP item or something, only for a freaking dragon to spawn and say, nope, get out of here. And in my rush, I accidentally made a mistake. Willy, no! Yup, if you leave without reviving your Denpa Men, then they disappear. As in, they actually go back to their home territory. What this means is that you have to catch that particular Denpa Man again where you first caught them. Thankfully, I caught him here in my studio, so... Oh, I'm out of room. Well, good luck out there, Willy. There's also a shrine where you can give offerings to get them back this way too, so it's not totally inconvenient. And this definitely feels like a callback to old school jRPG methods of having to go to a church or clone a down enemy if their HP dropped to 0. So yeah, the Denpa Men really do tick all these boxes for a decent RPG game. A bit simple and casual, but the colorful graphics, ease of grinding, and a simple charm of it all bundles it up to a cute package.
So let's move on to show how the game starts to actively hate you.
So our next objective is to go to this forest. The mole people give you some quick tips, like how green Denpa can resist the elemental attacks here, and they also warn you about paralysis. The dungeon itself is full of bugs. Let me take a moment here to commend the monster designs, by the way. They can be very cute, or just plain cool. We got these caterpillars that reminds me of Heimlich from A Bug's Life. Remember that movie? And look at the grin on this evil dude's face. And also the wind beasts just, mwah, they just look straight up cool while fitting in the art style. The enemies start to change up their attacks too, adding to the RNG for random battles for better or worse. The paralysis they inflict can suck though. It forces Denpa Men to skip their turns. They can actually heal on their own, but the status effect can last from a single turn to multiple. And the overworld puts hazards out too. These toxic pulls damage you per step. Honestly, I'd feel bad for someone who didn't have the luck to catch a healer Denpa right from the start. Thankfully, the game provides a healing spring that you can use to rejuvenate the party. Aw yeah, just in time. Now let me use this to grind up some enemies and come back and... oh, they're usable only once. And only once. If you leave and come back, that spring will still be consumed. That's kinda harsh, to be honest. It is very important to explore these dungeons too. The bottom screen is a map that fills up for places you haven't been to, so you can see the treasure chests on the screen and know when you've opened them too. You also find very useful equipment for the area. And as you reach the boss, your hero reminds you that you're doing this to save his girlfriend. So charge fearlessly, Denpa Men.
Ow! Ow! Oh no! Oh god, no! Please stop! Stop!
Yup. Team-wide attacks are the bane of my existence in the Denpa.
Editor's note. I couldn't stop tapping the box to emphasize how much I hate the team-wide attacks in this game, so get used to it.
Windbug will either paralyze your entire team or devastate them. Like, look at the tension on the bottom screen, they're all at low health. If you're just mindlessly auto-attacking, then you're not gonna get far. I mean, that's good though, the game is stimulating. You have to change up your tactics in the middle of a boss fight. It's like the game is forcing you to wake up and ask if you're actually learning how to play the game. So don't be cheap and skip out on using those healing items. You're gonna need them. Somehow, I managed to win on my first try. And the best part about beating bosses is the treasure room that always awaits you ahead. We get more room parts for the second dungeon, which means we can kidnap, abduct, capture more Denpa Men. And with this, our team size has reached a max size of 8 people. Alright, Ocean Cave is next. And, the area kinda sucks. It's a shame that they're already recycling assets from the first cave dungeon. There is more variety up ahead, so I don't know why they were recycling so soon. And remember, this was like a $10 3DS download game at the time. Something like this these days will probably cost $30, and you will have people defending and justify the price. Anyways, for the new enemies in this cave, we get some watery hams that call in for backup. We also get tadpole frogs that love to poison your Denpa. Thank God the poison doesn't damage you outside of battle like in old school Pokemon games.
It's just the floor that hurts you.
But it does stick around after the battle, so be sure to bring some antidote. Unless you like taking damage at the end of every turn. I don't know, you might be a masochist, that's not up to... I mean, I'm not gonna judge, but call me. So let's take a moment to talk about the equipment in the Denpa Men. You do get equipment that can help you resist these status effects, as well as ward it off completely later on. But you also get these bracelets that can change up the element of your basic attack. This is good for regular non-magical Denpa, so they can still land critical strikes on the enemy, and not fall far behind. It's just another layer of strategy too. You also get special equipment that could also prevent damage from the floor, as well as provide buffs to your stats. It's also at this point of the game where my Denpa started to evolve, as in their skills grow just a little stronger, so their antenna roots grow a bit bigger. But it's also at this point where the dungeon starts to increase the number of enemies you fight per battle. Which makes sense, you have 8 Denpa Men now, but the battles start to drag out after a while. Especially with all the animations playing one after another where the Denpa go in, and then the enemy attacks, and then the slower Denpa go in, and then the slower enemy attacks. It's all fragmented and it just makes the battle drag out way longer than it should. That's a typical jRPG sin though, it's more about the genre itself rather than the game, so what can you do? So, moving on, we discovered this mole encampment, where they tell you about a jerk octopus. One of them also offers to heal you and... Huff and puff? Is this a Dragon Quest reference? It's useful, but like the springs, he only does it once. Which sucks because, man, I get tired watching the menu and healing the Denpa right after every battle. Also, since the dungeon is longer, they also put a warp point on the 4th floor, which is great. You can use this to teleport back to digital and heal up automatically, then descend back down into the dungeon. This is very useful for grinding, especially since the flying hams can call in for backup and make the battles draw out even longer.
Damn you, Poison Ray!
Screw it. At least the EXP and money stack up and... Parts acquired. Oh yeah, there are rare drops in this game. I'm talking suits that have less than a single % chance drop rate. And they're really good too. They can give crazy amounts of defense or buff up some stats by a large chunk. So when one of them drops, you can be damn sure that it pumps out that sweet dopamine and give whichever Denpa you decide to put it on an edge.
Oh yeah, that's the stuff.
So after a bit of grinding, I go and face the Octopider. Unfortunately, I only had a win using Denpa, which wasn't effective against him. But despite that, I had a way easier time with this boss. The boss can potentially poison the entire team, but since poison doesn't make them skip a turn, I had a way easier time compared to the last boss. So with the octopus gone, a mole dude comes up and congratulates us by giving us the PC parts. Now, this is where the real team building fun can happen. Ludo, no? You can share Denpa Men QR codes. People have compiled lists that are still available 11 years later. So for those who don't travel or just don't live around many radio waves, this PC tower is a nice alternative. Not only that, but you can cheat. There is a QR editor tool available online where you can customize your very own Denpa Men. You can determine the color, how big they are, and you can determine their antenna power too, and even change up how they look. I did try to hold off on this to see how far I can get with my limited Denpa pool, so you won't see my abominations. Yet. But here's some advice. Keep in mind that the sooner you scan for Denpa, the better. Since all the Denpa Men obtained this way only start at level 1. For comparison, Denpa you catch naturally have their levels average out based on your hero's level. So any Denpa Men you obtain via QR code will have to grind up to actually be usable. And of course, the later you are in the game, the longer you'll spend grinding. There are charms you can get that can increase EXP gain, but that Denpa Men have to be in the party, has to be alive at the end of the battle, and you don't get these equipments until way later in the game. And another thing to note, any QR generated Denpa Men you lose in a dungeon cannot return, period. They're just straight up deleted. You can't get them back in the shrine. So if you're planning to play this game, it is my strongest recommendation to at least scan a handful of useful men. Oh yeah, men. And I say this for backup. I understand not wanting to do so out of principle, but trust me, later on the game does not play nicely, and this level caveat can make or break some people's willpower to push through the later dungeons. So with the water cave cleared, the evil tower is next.
So, let's go to that evil tower, the last dungeon of the game. So far. Unsurprisingly, Denpa Men with light-based attacks get the full advantage here. White Denpa can not only defend against dark attacks, but they straight up have no elemental weakness either. That being said, the Tower of Evil is no slouch. There's a basement you can explore for some really good treasures. Look at these axe-wielding dudes about to cut my Denpa Men in half. It's nice that I could take on these bloodbats now with ease, and even the dragons proved not to be as tough as I thought. Ran away for nothing. But the game starts throwing curveballs as you get up higher, where you run into ghosts! Yeah, basic attacks won't touch them unless you have the Holy Talisman equipped. I got lucky and found some sick drip that lets me bust some ghosts too. Now they don't stand a ghost of a chance. Also magic monkeys. They cast buffs. All in all, there really isn't too much to say about the Tower of Evil. It's actually a pretty fun dungeon. Up top we meet the King of Evil, and this is it. This is the battle we've been building up to. The King of Evil is also weak to light magic, but he's got plenty of HP, and he gets 2 turns that lets him pile up the damage. His Dark Breath skill can blind the Denpa and make it harder to land hits. His Infernal Breath is even worse. It's fire based and can burn, so the damage can really build up fast if you're not being careful. It also helps that I caught Ellis, a Denpa that can cast Invincibility. But it's only for 1 Denpa, and it lasts for a couple of turns. So it's really only useful if you want to keep your reviver or your healer alive, when you know something big is coming. Oh yeah, you know. But persevere, use your skills and items wisely, and put this jerk in his place to get your Denpa's girlfriend back. When we win, we get a glimpse of Crystal, who looks incapacitated, either dead or dizzy from spinning too much. Her and the King of Evil end up disappearing, and now your hero has to go out and search for them all over again. The treasure at the end of the tower upgrades a raft into a boat, and if you go off screen a bit, you can find some more chests to open before heading back home. And I'm gonna be honest, I was kinda surprised back in the day when I saw 4 more dungeons open up. I was expecting like 1 more super dungeon because again, digital eShop titles were seen as shovelware, and the Denpa Men was a really cheap price. So the game really expands from here, which is great. But also this is where the hate turns into hatred. In level recommendation order, the Volcano is next. And because it's fire, I went back to the base to chill with the Denpa and see who else to bring. A little tip, dual colored Denpa are useful. They have only partial resistance, sure, but as a trade-off, they suffer no elemental weakness. Come on Reese, let's go. Also, I love that this mustache Denpa I caught is named Blaze. It's perfect for this fiery dungeon. Look, the axe-wielding dudes grew a beard and now are on fire. The boar is on fire too. Finally, self-cooking bacon, oh yeah. And even the chocobos got it out for us. KFC now stands for Kentucky Fried Chocobo. Go get 'em, guys. We also get more ghosts of the fiery variety. They're extra annoying since the dungeon layout is narrow and an open path. The ghosts tend to fly on over and initiate battle whenever they feel like it too.
As a matter of fact, the dungeon itself is pretty brutal. The Fire Wisps cast Fire Wisp and does area-wide attacks, and it's pretty hard to take them all out on the first turn. I'll be honest, I spend an hour longer in this dungeon compared to the Tower of Evil. It's a struggle to get a perfect team legitimately, and the enemies just keep attacking the whole group. Each time I got a little further in, I had to stop and retreat because my mana would be down from constantly healing after every battle, and then I have to fight my way through the hordes of enemies all over again. I try to run away through the enemies, but the chances are very low. Watch this one time where I failed a runaway and was literally left with only 1 Denpa Man alive, who only survived because he was completely resistant to fire-based attacks. There is an item that lets you run away from any battle, but the cost of it is so high that you can save up until the end of the game and still be unable to afford it. So this is the dungeon where I went screw it. I'm using the QR codes now, which meant I had to go back and grind to level up the newbies. Meet Calvin. We met on the GameFAQs forums.
So anyways, as you go further down the dungeon, you get to encounter these big old flaming mammoths. They're sometimes accompanied with these teeth enemies. I never got to kill them, at this point of the game that is, but they do give huge boosts of EXP. And as you go through the dungeon, you can talk to the mole people since this is where their base is. They all give weird nuggets of wisdom, and at the end, the chief of the mole people gives you a quest based on what all the NPCs said. Look at this Master Roshi looking motherfucker.
You know what? No. On second thought, he's like Blaine from Pokemon Red. Remember how his gym had quiz puzzles too? Actually, that makes too much sense. They're both representative of the fire type.
Where no radio waves, there are no Denpa Men. Oh man, this is so true. After passing the quiz, you get the right to face the boss, a volcanic golem. After all the many times I had to go through this dungeon, my level was on par for the dungeon after the next one. So surely this boss will be a piece of bitch! Nothing more to say other than team-wide attacks being the bane of my existence in the first Denpa Men. It's a struggle just to keep most of them alive. Cooling the golem off with water can't stop its most devastating attacks, but it does power up pretty freaking quickly, and if you're not fast enough to smack him with some aqua, then good night Prince. Anyways, I powered through and got a truth orb for my troubles, which unlocks the next dungeon, the road to Oasis. So before heading out, I just wanted to chat with the Denpa real quick. I like how sassy she is. I do what I want when I want. I don't have homework anymore. This dude wants me to bring him a girlfriend. I also wish I was a little taller. 5'6" by the way. Surprise! It's another forest dungeon filled with buggies and plants. For some reason, your Denpa mentions an air of sadness as well. This dungeon is like a maze. Each room contains 4 passages, and if you take a wrong turn, then you get sent right back to the beginning. The mole people here give you directions, which, okay, that's fine, but it kills the challenge and point of this dungeon. I would have loved it if they took the Paper Mario route and you had to observe the environment and look for little changes or signs to find out the right direction to go. There's even alternative branches in the path so you could find some cool rooms with chests inside, but they don't tell you that until you reach the end, and you also pretty much have to guess where they are. Most of the enemies are reskins now, with the exception of a new mob called Hydra Plant, who gets boss-like properties now. Wow, 2 turns and team-wide attacks? My favorites. This is also a good time to mention that the auto skill system starts to bite you in the ass more often than it should. It was great in the beginning, but now that more complex skills are being used, as well as single and team-wide attacks, the system just automatically picks targets, and obviously it can't read your mind, so it doesn't know which target is a bigger priority, specifically the big ones that do team-wide attacks, or sometimes even the small ones. But also the team-wide magic casters might end up going in for a manual attack instead if it knows someone's about to die, which can hurt you if there's still so many more mobs left on the field. At the end, you meet up with the fairies who hold an orb. They're needed to unlock the final dungeon. But surprise, the fairy queen's sister was the one holding the orb, and she was kidnapped. So the village has had an air of sadness ever since. Which makes sense, your hero Denpa can relate a little bit to plot-based abduction. So you decide to help and rescue her in exchange for the orb. Oh, and she'll make it worth our while too. Good, because the while is actually a fairy giving us a 50% discount at the Spirit Shrine. You know, where you have to give offerings to bring back dead Denpa? Hey, Willy! Oh yeah, the boss of the dungeon. It was a moss demon. Not much else to say, really. I kicked his ass, no big deal. The ice dungeon is next, and we get some cool variants of familiar monsters. See what I did there? But yeah, the icy dungeon is a bit cruel in that it doesn't allow you to backtrack and properly explore everywhere. If you didn't bring teleporters from the shop to head back home, then you're kinda screwed. Because I think it should go without saying at this point that the mobs are tough, and even when I'm over leveled, they can easily wipe my party if I'm not careful. And the icy dragons? They breathe fire. So me bringing whatever Denpa that was the color cyan, I don't know what color that is, I'm colorblind, ended up being my fall here. I'll admit it, I was blindly auto-attacking near the exit just trying to get my grind on and realized my team was wiped without me noticing. So I had to bring back my Denpa. Amari was not happy about me bringing him back either. He ended up being my favorite, just look how tired his face is. I caught him in the office too, so he can relate to the office life. So this is where I hit my biggest roadblock. The boss is an icy demon now. Ooh. And this one pushed me through a game over again, and again, and again. So you're probably thinking, well, Galactic, if that is your real name, then why don't you wear ice-resistant equipment? Simply put, he just fucking hits hard, man. His team-wide attacks can also paralyze, and he also freezes. Also, I'm obligated to bring Joshua here for his skill, Always Treasure. It takes up your entire mana pool, but also guarantees that any enemies that are still on the field will drop a treasure. Definitely useful for bosses who drop rare clothes. But yeah, after multiple tries and bringing in some new recruits, meet Chucky. I think they're cute. We finally managed to bring the big beastie down, but barely. Lyra, the fairy sister, is safe now, and she gives us the Holy Orb, and thus the Dark Ruins is next. After the clusterfuck that was the Ice Dungeon's boss, I took a break here and traveled a bit to capture more Denpa Men. Actually travel. I went down to the lakeshore and local parks to see if I can capture some more useful men. Sure, I can use the QR thingy, but again, they need to be trained up to your current level, and I did have some fun wandering about collecting Denpa Men. The glowing one means they have a rare skill. Sure, it's definitely an archaic version of Pokemon Go, but going out to explore made me realize just how innovative the Denpa team was when it came to collecting more for your crew. They took full advantage of the 3DS hardware here. And the Denpa just have so many different skills, and it's clear they want you to experiment, but sadly, not all of them are useful. Having skills like Cure Burns and Poisons, yeah sure, that might be useful in a pinch, but the bosses and enemies spam them way too much. Should have buffed them to include immunity in my opinion. And there are buffs too, but for some reason they're split from buffing one Denpa, and then there's other buffs that do the same thing for the entire team. And it's not like one buff is stronger than the other, so why wouldn't you prefer to buff your entire team's strength or speed? But for now, we're in the final stretch. Let's go to the Dark Ruins. There's an NPC Mole Man here who also doubles as an item completion NPC. Check out this dude on the GameFAQs forum that managed to complete the entire compendium. Congratulations, man. As you stroll in, an army of mole people come and move on ahead so they can scout the area. And trust me, this place gets confusing fast. There's multiple floors with each floor being cemented away from each other thanks to these pits. So you're climbing stairs, falling down holes, taking on the same gloomy colored enemies. There's these teeth looking monsters that I brought up in the Volcano as well. They spawn here too, much more frequently, and they give a huge boost of EXP. For those who play this and notice the 2 damage bracelets in the shop, that's for these calcium based bitches. It assures 2 damage no matter what, which is cool because they dodge a lot and use shields, but getting a critical hit is just faster and farms them more reliably. So if you're trying to farm these teeth, go for crits. Also, I got incredibly lucky and got the clothes they drop as well. It gives a passive XP multiplier to whoever wears it. The game also hands off similar equipment in chests too, which can make farming teeth fun actually. So at the top, we meet the King of Evil. He's got some gaudy golden armor on now. Crystal, your girlfriend, is awake and tries to get your hero to leave. But Mama didn't raise no cowardly Denpa.
That's me. I'm Mama.
The King of Evil gets sick watching the romance and offers us, the players, a deal. Let's conquer the world together. The ladies love a dominator, and the pension's pretty good. If you agree, then you get a prompt to betray the Denpa Men in your team. Jaquan! Nico! Joshua, no! Chiro! He died again. Wow, not even Amara's mama loved him? Oh well. He doesn't put the toilet seat down. Sean! And now, that leaves Jackie, our protagonist. Dead, gone, wiped out. What happens to our Denpa Men? Okay, I was too cowardly to see with my main team, so I reset and grabbed some Denpa filler. Sorry Osvaldo, Keegan, Major, Kaiden, Fernando, Calvin, and Major. Otra vez, I watched the Denpa Men team wipe out, and yeah, it's just a standard game over. Your Denpa Men float back to their territories, and my hero mentions having waken up from a nightmare. The same cutscene plays too when you go back, so after being betrayed by the King of Evil, I brought back the main crew and faced them head on. So he's like tough, but standard tough at this point. He can pretty much knock out one Denpa Man if his strike lands, but considering that standard mobs can already practically wipe your team if you're not careful, I'm kinda used to it. So you take him out, And your hero mentions us, the player, helping them out too. Haha, I feel complimented actually. And oh, the king insults us directly immediately afterwards. Now I'm sad. The king fades away, the Denpa Men all cheer, and Crystal and the hero reunite finally. We get the credits roll, and that's the Denpa Men. Or is it? We get a shot of the hero and Jackie returning home. They have one last request for us. They wish to get married. But to do that, they need an oath emblem. The two strike a simultaneous pose, and we're off in our new cruiser. And yep, we get even more new dungeons now. 3 of them in fact. And Crystal is now part of the team. She's a full team healer. I skipped ahead to see if I can check out the final dungeon, but sadly a fairy blocks the path until you complete the previous 2 dungeons. So what's the point? So off we go to the same old story. Crater Hole is just a repeat of the volcano. We got some cooked corn, mira el elote. And I've got the same complaints as the previous volcano. The enemies here hover above the ground while you're stuck in narrow and skinny paths, so the encounters are pretty much enforced. When you make it to the treasure room, a boss shows up and blocks the way. And this one's a bit harder since he's got some backup. But he should be easy peasy at this point. Kill him and get the Oath of Flames. This is pretty much a filler dungeon, and I think the game would have been better without it because, yeah, I just really did not like this dungeon. And I really don't remember it at all, even as I watch my own playthrough. It bleeds way too much into the previous volcano dungeon. They really should have switched it up, like why not make it one big ol' room instead of the skinny pathways? Like dot it with lots of boulders and minecarts plopped around, that way we could pretend to sneak around the overworld enemies and make it more stealth-like. I think that would have been fun actually. Anyways, no sense in complaining about an 11-year-old digital-only game that's no longer available to be acquired, legally at least. So off we go to the next locale. The forest dungeon has you going through woods that drop down to an icy dungeon as well. Then you climb back up to the wood segment. It's unique in that there are actually 2 bosses waiting on opposite ends. But to reach the bosses, you have to go through a series of teleporters in the second half of the dungeon, where the main gimmick is just remembering which teleporter you took. Riveting, I know. Both bosses are golems too, one that represents aqua and the other that represents ice. Their rewards complement the other two. For example, if you beat the aqua golem, then you get a pair of clothes called Snow Leopard, which prevents freezing. Of course, even with the advantage, the bosses are still really freaking tough. Dead. I made the same mistake as I did last time in the first dungeon too, and accidentally forgot to revive everyone before leaving. Crystal doesn't leave permanently, she just says she's back. But I also lost a QR Denpa Men too, as in all those levels and grinding? Gone. Oh yeah, fruit effects. I never really brought them up because I didn't actually use them. They give a permanent upgrade to your stats, but they usually only upgrade it by like 1 point. So I can never really justify using it on a particular Denpa Men because you're always swapping out your team for the dungeons anyways, and I can only really justify it for my main hero since he never actually leaves the party, so But anyways, it's the Ice Golem that's holding the oath, so take him out and acquire the last key item so we can access the final dungeon. The Guardian Tower. What horrors await our Denpa in the final challenge of this surprisingly difficult, yet undeniably charming game. So we got the Dark Dragons on the first floor. They're not tough or anything, they're just the same ones that ran me out of the first Dark Dungeon all the way back when I was level 3. And I have to wonder, was this intentional? Like a way to show the player how far they've come? Or was there a harder Dark Dragon that the devs plain old forgot to toggle on for the dungeon ahead? As I explored, I encountered a pit that took me to a basement filled with ghosts. And then, I saw it. A level 99 gate. My curiosity got the best of me, I'm not gonna lie, so I wanted to go peek inside. You know what? Nah, I'll spare you for now, don't worry. So I went the other way and started climbing up higher instead. So on the third floor, we hear a roar, and we face the Dark Bear. Also, some friendly advice, always treasure is not worth it anymore at this point. I was being stubborn, but none of the bosses drop anything exclusive. But yeah, he's just a standard boss at this point. And while this first boss isn't tough, the real challenge of the tower is the fact that there's no teleporters going back, and every 3 floors there is a boss of different elemental types. Hydra Melon, the grass and earth boss I think. Aqua Mammoth, water and darkness. Ice Bug, the ice and bug type I think, whatever. It's not completely cruel, at least every time you beat a boss there is a spring of healing along with a treasure room.
All hail the spring of healing!
On the 12th floor, I faced Octolich. He doesn't have a typing, and for some reason he hits really hard, like holy cow! But I was confident in my Denpa Men, and I knew they were gonna take out this Octo bit itch.
For those wondering, my cat made me run away when I was trying to heal, and thus I was about to get a game over, and I didn't want to lose the QR Denpa Men, so I had to restart, and because there was no transporters, I never went back to home base, which meant I never activated the quick save, which means I lost 2.5 hours of progress. The cat doesn't have a name, it doesn't deserve one.
This cat. You see this cat? This cat made me try to run away from a boss fight. It didn't work. I didn't want to lose any more QR Denpa Men, I just decided to reset. Also, fun, sad little fact, because this dungeon doesn't have any transporters back, which means you have to start from the first floor every time you want to climb back up, I bought the roller skates so I can run away from all the encounters, and found out later that in one of the chests they actually give you the roller skates, which means I spent so much money for no reason. So, the enemies start to change up the further you get into the dungeon. We've got some octomobs, a new wisp type, some butterflies, and these golden fangs that drop tons of cash. You'd think I'd celebrate getting that money back, but at this point the damage to my psyche was already done. We also get upgraded monkeys higher up in the tower, so be careful because they specifically can reflect magic spells right back at your Denpa. There's also a very annoying teleporter segment filled with mobs, but since I had the roller skates, I just kept running away trying to figure out the way out. When I finally found it, I found one mob ready to chomp me and just wouldn't let me go. Just look at him biting away at me. Anyways, at the 18th floor, we finally reached the final challenge. 3 golems stand on our way for the final test. And yup, it's a boss rush. First is a Rook. I use Andre to buff up the team's attack and go all in. The Rook only focuses on a single target and puts up a shield, but his lane defense is not enough to stop my powerful Denpa Men. Next up is the Queen. The second verse is the same as the first. Now let me hit auto so I can put her in the hearse. Finally, we've got the True King. He regens HP per turn and focuses on single targets, but when his limiter is released, that's when shit gets real. He's invincible, and of course he uses a team-wide attack. At this point, I used up these items I saved up called barriers. They grant the same invincibility to my Denpa Men, but they have to be alive in order to receive the effects, and it only lasts about 2 to 3 turns. Poor Crystal was the only one who didn't get the effect in time, so she was the only one being taken out by it. So cheap strategy sure, but I got tired of facing the same boss strategy again and again. So once they were defeated, the room opens up, and we get the Oath Emblem. We cut to a forest with fairies, and the queen acknowledges your heroes and Crystal's marriage. The two exchanges words, the Denpa Men all cheer, and the credits roll once again. And that's the Denpa Men. Or is it? Did you forget about that basement? Well, there's one more challenge waiting for us inside. You don't need to grind up to the level, don't worry, but it's the game's way of saying that whatever's hidden behind it is gonna be tough. So I go back to the island to prepare, and even talk to the newlyweds. Check out his antenna, he polished it just for you. Aw, Crystal mentions that the King of Evil was smiling while looking at flowers. Anyways, I bring my best men and go down to the depths. It's the King of Evil. He's not dead, and he's been training for a rematch. Okay, I'll admit it, I was hoping to brute force the fight because I just got tired of the game at this point. So I brought a bunch of barriers, the item that casts invincibility on the whole team. But no, it's not that easy. The King of Evil is too fast for my current team, so the moment that barrier went down, about half my Denpa quickly followed. Which meant that whoever died wouldn't be affected by the barrier if it was thrown up again, which meant my strategy was scattered, haphazard, and just plain old didn't work. And the King's elemental type actually changes when you use his weakness. If the King of Evil casts an unlucky aura, then you're pretty much doomed. He becomes incredibly buffed and can pretty much wipe your team out in one turn. It took me multiple tries, but I finally found the winning strategy. So you have to bring specific types: ice, water, and fire Denpa. It helps if you make fire the fastest, then water goes second, and ice type the third. You'll see why. When you start the fight, the king has a weakness to fire since he's technically an ice type. So cast some flames, and this will make him change his element again. Then cast a new weakness, water. He changes once more, and tells you to stop copying him. That's when you cast ice, and then the king has been weakened. If done in the proper order, you make his stats tank down, making him slower and weaker all around. From there you can just bring the hurt since he's weak to literally everything. And if you're smart, you can do this from the first turn too. He doesn't stay down forever though, he's got a ton of HP, and he will eventually get back up and force you to employ the same strategy as before. But you can do it, Denpa Men. We're no slouch. Show this level 99 schmuck that we don't need no more stinking grinding to finish this game once and for all. And yes, I won! 69,000 EXP. Nice. Wow, nice. I swear I didn't edit that. If you use Always Treasure, then he drops some decent endgame clothes. He also drops an emblem that you can sell for lots of moolah. You can keep farming him too. The King of Evil respawns if you leave and come back. No new dialogue or anything though, the same cutscene plays and the same drop drops. Fun final fact. After the fight, I was trying to make it back to the island, but then got ambushed by some ghosts. So I tried to run away, and I nearly freaking died again. Jesus Christ, man. But yes, that was the Denpa Men. Or is it? Because there are parts 2 and 3. But I'm not covering those. Not yet at least. I want to see how well this video does, because parts 2 and 3 does greatly expand beyond the boundaries of the first game. It has actual towns and locations, landmarks, fishing and farming, and even though I owned the game for years, I never actually gotten through any of them, so this is my way of just trying to clean up my collection and seeing if other people were interested in seeing the series. Anyways, if you stuck around to the end, thank you so much for watching. Have a good night. See ya.